Zoe Sam, funny face, right? Then Zoe said, damn it, Tiara, get ready to laugh. And just like that when Zoe says, damn it, Tiara, get ready to laugh. Then damn it, Tiara says, not funny. Then Zoe said, Beatrice, you try a funny face. And just like that when Zoe says, Beatrice, you try a funny face. Then Beatrice says, where the paws go and Zoe says, ha 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 ha. The diamond tiara says, still not funny. Then Zoe says, oh, I know, where Zoe says, a leaf on my head. Where Zoe says, I have a leaf on my head. I'm Zoe Leafhead, leaf on my head. Then the paws go and Beatrice says, ah ha 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 ha. Then Zoe says, that's funny, right? And just like that when Zoe says, that's funny, right? The diamond tiaras are wrong. Then Zoe says, this is harder than I thought. Where Zoe says, we need a funny word. Where Zoe says, ooh, I know. Where Zoe says, a big silly mustache. Where Zoe says, look at me, Zoe the mustache guy. Oh, yes, I do. Look at me. Wanna get around the garden? Oh, yes, I do. Where Zoe says, hey, guys. Where Zoe says, Beatrice thinks it's really funny. She thinks it's hilarious. Where Zoe says, hello, Diamond Tiara. I have a mustache. Now, you may laugh. The Diamond Tiara said, mustaches. Not funny. Then Zoe said, butterfly in the mustache? Funny? The Diamond Tiara said, nope. Then Zoe said, you are now Diamond Dazzle Mustache. Where Diamond Tiara says, I am not laughing. Where Diamond Tiara says, I don't like facial hair. And I'm not laughing. Where Diamond Tiara says, and I'm keeping this helicopter. Where Diamond Tiara says, mine. Where Zoe says, we got to get my helicopter back, but how? Where Zoe says, wait, I know someone who can help us. Where Zoe says, hey, Penny Lane. The Penny Lane says, oh, hi, Paw Squad. Hi, Zoe. Hi, Beatrice. What are you doing here? Where Zoe says, hi, Penny Lane. We need your help. The Penny Lane says, how can I help you? Where Zoe says, well, we're trying to get my helicopter back, but Diamond Tiara will not let us have it unless we make her laugh. Where Penny Lane says, oh, that's sad. I never see her smile before. Where Penny Lane says, how about a knock-knock joke get you up? Where Penny Lane says, knock-knock. Then Zoe says, who's there? Then Penny Lane says, Zoe, it's me, Penny Lane, your friend. Then Zoe said, oh, yeah. Where Penny Lane says, oh, I don't think that's not how the joke goes. Where Penny Lane says, ooh, I know. How about a funny creature? Where Penny Lane says, it says here in the book, a book about funny creatures who makes you laugh. Where Penny Lane says, maybe one of them can make Diamond Tiara laugh. Where Penny Lane says, how about a mumble monkey? Where Zoe says, that's a great idea. Where the mumble monkey says, hello everyone. Where Penny Lane says, told ya he's funny. Where Zoe says, wait for it, let's go. Where Diamond Tiara says, what do you do with it? Is that a back scratcher? Where Zoe says, hey Diamond Tiara. Where Diamond Tiara says, what do you want now? Where Zoe says, we got something to show you. Where Zoe says, say hello to Mumble Monkey. Where Penny Lane says, and then Zoe says, Mumble Monkey, funny, yes? And then Diamond Tiara says, funny? No. Where Zoe says, wait. Where Zoe says, I know something that can make the Mumble Monkey really hilarious. Where Zoe says, how about he can meow? And then the pause goes, Zoe, Penny Lane says, the Diamond Tiara says, Mumble Monkey, still not funny. Where Zoe says, well, that's not working. Where Zoe says, hey, how about he can juggle? Where Zoe says, how about if I make perfumes, rocks, and moths? Where Zoe says, and more moths. Where Zoe says, this is perfect. It's hilarious. Where Zoe says, wow, he's juggling even more with us on top. Where he says, ta-da! And then Dominator says, bless, stop that. Where Dominator says, I don't like Mama Monkey juggling rocks and perfumes and moths on my head. Where Mama Monkey says, on my head. The Dominator says, stop that. And then Mama Monkey said, stop that. And then Dominator said, I mean it. Then Mama Monkey said, I mean it. And then Dominator says, off my head. Where Dominator says, and I'm keeping this book about funny creatures who make you laugh. Which is, it doesn't make me laugh. Where Dominator says, because the Mama Monkey did not make me laugh. Where Dominator says, I'm keeping this too, mine. Where Penny Lane says, Zoe, is it true? We're never gonna get my book back about funny creatures who makes you laugh. Where Zoe says, don't worry, Penny Lane, we'll get your book back and my helicopter back. Where Zoe says, it's just we need something funny. Where Zoe says, and I know something who can help us. The Mama Monkey said, I can. Then the Mama Monkey said, ta-da, 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 ta-da. Then Zoe said, sorry. Not you, Mama Monkey. Where Zoe says, wait, I know someone who can help us. They said Twilight Sparkles. And then Zoe said Twilight. Where Twilight says, hi Penny. Hi Zoe. Hi Paw Squad. What's up? Where Zoe says, hi Twilight. We need your help. Where Twilight says, how can I help you? Where Penny Lane says, well, we're trying to make Dominator laugh because she won't get back Zoe's helicopter and my book, and she won't give it back unless we make her laugh. Where Twilight says, oh yeah, that's so sad. I never see her smile before. Where Twilight says, I know something that'll make her laugh. The Silly Dance Show. Where Dominator says, finally, peace and quiet. Where Zoe says, hey Dominator. And then Dominator says, you again. Where Zoe says, Dominator, prepare to be laugh at the Silly Dance Show. Where Zoe says, wait, before we start. Where Zoe says, the Silly Dance Show needs some music. Where Zoe says, welcome to the Silly Dance Show. Then he says, did you see that? She smiled. Where Zoe says, you smiled. Then Dominator says, no I didn't. Then Zoe said, yes you did. That means you're almost laughing. Then Dominator said, never. Then Zoe said, she thinks silly dances are funny and silly. Where Zoe says, hey, how about we make something else to dance? Where Zoe says, wait, dance doesn't start with Where Zoe says, does move start with Where Zoe says, yeah, it does. It says here in the letter M. Where Zoe says, abracadabra, move. Where Zoe says, we need something else to move. Where Zoe says, good idea, Beatrice. Dominator's chair. Where Zoe says, we need your help. Turn the letters that way. Where Zoe says, got it. Move. Where Dominator says, hey, I'm moving. I like moving. Where Dominator says, I'm keeping this too. Mine. The Dominator says, hey. Then Twilight says, she's got Mr. Sparkles. Then Penny Lane says, and my book. Then Zoe says, and my helicopter. Where Dominator says, move and chair. Not funny. Then Zoe says, stop. Down. Where Zoe says, wait. Those words don't start with the letter M. They say, whoa, look out, duck! Where Zoe says, after that chair. The Dominator says, why am I not stopping? Why am I not stopping? And then Penny Lane says, slow down. Then Zoe says, come back. Then Beatrice says, yeah. Then Beatrice says, aha. Then Beatrice says, then Beatrice says, ah. And then Dominator almost hit the statue. Boy, am I not laughing. The Dominator wow! Oof! Then Zoe said, Diamond Dazzle Tiara, are you okay? And then Dominator said, no, I'm not okay. Where Dominator says, I'm cold and I'm shivering and I'm all wet. Where Dominator says, now I have to walk all the way back home. Where Zoe where Penny says, what's so funny, Zoe? Where Zoe says, I like the starfish on her head. Where Penny Lane says, and I like the glasses they're made out of twigs. Where Zoe says, wait, I have an idea. Where Zoe says, how about we get Dominator to see herself? They said, how? Where Zoe says, we just need a mirror. Where Zoe says, wait, does mirror start with M? Where Zoe says, yeah, it does. Then Zoe says, mirror. Where Dominator says, now I have to walk all the way back home. Where Dominator says, I don't like walking. Where Dominator says, huh? The Dominator says, then Zoe said, she started to smile. Where Dominator says, who's that in the mirror? Where Dominator says, she's got a starfish on her head, and the glasses are made out of twigs. Where Penny Link says, she likes it. Where Dominator says, the Dominator says, hey, that's me. The Dominator says, they say, yes, we did it. She laughed. Where Zoe says, gang, we did it. She laughed, and she likes it. Where Dominator says, the Dominator says, hey, you made me laugh. You got your fangs back now. Where Zoe says, yes. Where Zoe says, we got my helicopter back. Where Penny Link says, and my book back. Where Twilight says, and Mr. Sparkle's back. Where Zoe says, so, wanna play another game before it gets dark? They say, yes. Where Zoe says, how we play the helicopter game again? Where Zoe says, 3, 2, 1, launch. Where Zoe says, I guess the Momo Monkey wants it too.